This is episode 2 of the podcast on Bikva Sayira, and this is Shtei Derachim, part 2. And you can find Shtei Derachim at hdas.org /RAEK/2. That's the number 2, and then the word Derachim, all one word, 2DERACHIM.PDF. Those of you watching can see you got a new microphone and with an arm at the behest of some listeners. If it actually makes a difference, that's great. If it doesn't make a difference, let me know and I'll get rid of it. Instead of having it right here in front of my face. And we are on page Chaf. And we finished with the paragraph which began in the middle of the page, which began Rayon Zemenusach Acher, the same idea in a different version. Mosim Mijamut Mishmosh Rabbi Soil, they gave Seven Jamut and neighbor Rabbi Soil. Chasim Sorin Kieshlem Rabbi. Chasim hold they have a Rabbi, Mistag Sorin Kaim Tzichel Rabbi, Chasim hold they don't need a Rabbi, Ve'elu Shurim Betos, they're both making a mistake. And Avrohom makes a fascinating statement in the next paragraph in explaining this. Kilintzol Rabbi, to travel to Rabbi Spoimedo, to be aroused by him. Saper Masyosa Dosov, to tell stories about him. Lachzor Mei Mos Bishmot, to stay over statements in his name. Lemonagon Minhagid Tzidkus, to learn from him conducts of righteousness, righteous behavior. Lasos Kachol Sheitzaveh, and do everything he directs. Lasos Bivad Lei Karei, Kiesh Lodam Rabbi, Lefi Ashkofasim Mishok Doli Lito. According to the perspective of the greats of Lita, that's not called having a Rebbe. It's a fascinating idea. Why? Rebbe, according to them, somebody called Rebbe, Rak Zeh, only person it's Lomdim Torah Ma'asim. Yes, you learn Torah and how to act from him. Asher Boim Elovim Sefer Biyad. If you come to him with the Sefer, Moraketza Lil Mobon, he teaches you how to learn in that Sefer. Sinteza Zu shall Rebbe with Sefer, the synthesis of a Rebbe in a Sefer, Zo Iker HaChoser Ba'olam. This is the primary shortfall in our world. Hein Eitzel Chasidim, Hein Eitzel Lomshe. Both by Chasidim and both by the average person. V'shosh Rebbe Sheyosha, Rebbe Sol Levada B'chedra Chotim, Rebbe Sol sat by himself in a small room. Liad Sefer HaMusar Asher Lo, next to the Musar Sefer. Lo Kinei Arbei B'ribuya Vakrim. He was not so jealous of the many visitors Asher Bu Moshe Rash, who came to the hall in which the Maharash held court. Came to Choser HaSefer, because the Sefer is missing. Now we know that the Ramah says that most of our learning today are Rabbeim are Sfarim, because most of it comes from Sfarim. But Avrohom is still kind of shocking here, because it would seem that, well, that's B'di'evet. Well, we don't have Rabbeim, which we can learn so much knowledge from as we can from a Sefer at our point in time. So therefore, we have to rely on a Sefer. So where's Rabbi Avrohom going with this? See, we have to recognize in the first period of Chassidus, Mea Best, Baal Shem Tov, found Chassidus, the Mezrich, the Mezrich Magid, who was a successor, and also in later periods, Mehara Balatanya, the Balatanya, of course, was a Talmud Mezricher, and here it throws in like in parentheses, as if it's tossing it in there, that the Baal Tanya's main thrust was the Olam HaMachshava Chasidi, the world of Hasidic thoughts. And Reb Nachman Breslov, who is the contemporary of the Baal Tanya, B'nogel Chodos HaVavos. He was, that's in parentheses as well, the Chodos HaVavos. He, the Breslover, was at the time regarded as a main vehicle by which one understood the Chovos HaVavos of Chassidus. In other words, the practice of Chassidus, the Hislaivus, the Bren of Chassidus. So we had the Baal Tanya, who gave over the theoretical Kabbalistic world of Chassidus, and the Baal Tanya, the Breslover, who gave over the way in which one developed Dveikus and Hislaivus in one's heart. I'm saying that those are the two paragons. I think we understand how the Baal Tanya was the paragon of the one, but it's interesting that it shows that the breast was the paragon of the other. I don't know if I would have thought about that, but makes sense. Nimtzu arbe chasidim. There were a lot of chasidim. Asher yolem a Rabbi. Bemis Rabbi didn't have a Rabbi. Asher bemis lom the bipiv ketzad lilmod Torah. They learned from him how to learn. And here, this is a very, very literal approach. To learn by Rabbi means to learn how to learn. Not just to learn stuff, and even important stuff, but to learn how to learn. And that's true not just about lomdus, which we all know, learning how to learn, is how to get a derech, but to learn how to learn Sifrei Musar. That's also part of learning how to learn. So those early years, for the Baal Tanya, the time of the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcher and the Baal Tanya and Reb Nachman, that critique, which you mentioned is the Zusha, Reb Menashe, Rabbi Swell, that which you mentioned, Reb Menashe Eliyahu and Rabbi Swell. If not about other issues of critique, which we could have had about the early Hasidim. Okay, that's true. But if not of them, lo homasam, this critique would not have fit. In other words, I'm not saying this is the exclusion of other critiques of early Hasidim. We could find critiques. But this critique, that they were not teaching how to learn, that we would not apply in the early generation of Hasidim. But in later periods, the matters changed dramatically. And there is room for that critique. On the other hand, and later they lived with a different mistake. The Lamdin had his halacha sefer. Baal Bayis sefer hadrusha shelo. The Baal Bos had his drush svarim. Back then they didn't learn Daf Yomi, the Baal Batim. They learned Ein Yaakov and such like. Hamon Amal Tilim, the masses on the Tilim, which they could say. Hoyishal Tzenerena, the woman who had her Tzenerena. Kach Ma'avelo Kol Echad Echad Es Ma'at HaYadus Asher Lo. Each person would provide the content of the little fragment of Judaism which was his. But Darki Michaslo in his own special way. But when a person would come around from which you can learn the pathways of life, and he says in footnote here, I Mesechus Brachos Nirsu Talmidav, I think somebody Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai said, Rabbeinu Lamdenu Orchos Chaim teaches the pathways of life. Harei Nishar Lios Apiro Bilti Mukar. That gadol remains usually unrecognized, unsung, unappreciated. In other words, there's too much of a focus on the Sefer. And the context of the Rebbe is the Rebbe who appeals to my Sefer. The Sefer I've chosen. The Sefer might be a Gemara. The Sefer might be a Rambam. The Sefer might be Reb Chaim Brisker. The Sefer might be Tzenerena. The Sefer might be Chok Yisrael. The Sefer could be many things. But the focus is on who's going to help me with my Sefer. Who's going to help me with the Sefer which I have chosen, the Sefer which my Derech applies to. Lubavitch Atika. In ancient Lubavitch, Achachon is the sharp one. Notes from Memra, a statement was generated. Once every generation, the mercy of Kodesh Baruch Hu was aroused on those poor misnagdim. For even Imromi Nishmas Rebbe, and Kodesh Baruch Hu brought them from above the neshama of a Rebbe. Rebbe Sol Salanter. And also they messed up. Rabbi says he heard this statement, an elder chassid. So says Rabbi Sol, this is true about the Baal Batim in Lithuania. It's true. Most of them were not touched by the Muslim movement. Only very few of the Baal Batim were touched by the Muslim movement. He'd bilam, where they took them and immersed them, tiram and purified them. B'nei Am Kulo, in the eyes of the masses of the nation, Rabbi saw kasher yolem gam adheina. Rabbi saw was like other great rabbis they had till now. He was a goyen, a genius like other geniuses. Lochel because they didn't follow him. But in the Batei Medrash in Lithuania, there was at that time during that period, besides the Balbatim who come into the base Medrash to daven, a large group of learners, the sharp, brilliant prodigies with sharp minds, masmidim who were very diligent. Hashkudim limod Torah yom v'layla were constantly learning day and night. Chatanei chemed, they progressed to be wonderful sons-in-law. Who learned while relying on their father-in-laws sustaining them. Many Rosh Yeshivas, many of them went on to be Rosh Yeshivas. Gedolim b'Torah, and many of them went on to be great in Torah. Chol Eila, and all of these, b'yosim nesuim lashpos beis midrasho sha'agra, when they were under the influence of the base medrash of the Gra, lo hayu sukim b'asiyas pshetlach, midon barchim ba'avir. They were not involved in making up all sorts of novel ideas. Pshetlach, it's ironic because the word pshetlach comes from the word pshat. But a pshetel is the antithesis of pshat. It's something which is a complex and non-simple and not necessarily even strictly honest interpretation of what one's learning. They weren't immediately towers flying through the air. Kim lamdus darchei Torah. They learned the ways of Torah. Toch regesh achrayas chamor, out of a severe sense of obligation. Achrayas b'fnei emes, the obligation of truth. Hachoteres lagia leomek apshat, which dives down deeply to get to the depths of the pshat, not the pshetel. You know what? If we can suggest a pshetel of our own. Pshetel is spelled Pei Shin Tes Ayin Lamed Pshetel. Pshatal, right? It's an Iber pshat, not the simple pshat. An Iber pshat flies in the air. Pshat dives down deep to understand. I heard when I was a youngster learning in Shalvim under Shimon Zeleznik, that's how Tamar Rabbi Zalman, who he said, in Shmuz once, he said that the word pshat comes to the word lifshot, which means to expand or extend. And a sugya is full of creases, kmatim, full of creases. And pshat is to spread out those creases, to iron them out. That's pshat is. It takes the creases and irons out till you get a smooth surface. So that's one metaphor. It's not necessarily the same metaphor as digging down to the oimek pshat, but it's a similar idea in the sense that you're not looking to build up and make elaborate new structures, but to understand. And to understand means you can either say the oimek pshat, or you can say the pashut pshat, but the idea is lafshit, to find to remove all the kinks and all the creases and find that which is the emes. Anyway, be that as it may, he said the Lefia Gemara, Lamina Gemara about Achron. Going from the Gemara to the Achron, they dug down deep, and expanded their vision. El intelligentsia tonis chanonis zu, to this Torah intellectualism, which is full of chen, full of grace, which is something which is very impressive. Ba Musa pagab ben kuda. The Musa came and hit a point. With all the depth with which they learned the analysis of halacha, the people who are hit by Musar, so to speak. The Musar came and was pogaing them, so they devoted the same efforts to Yiras Shamayim. And from them emerged the founders and leaders of the great yeshivas in Jarmut and Lita. In which today Musar serves till today. One cannot say that till today, meaning the 2020s, but could perhaps say that back in the 1920s. As the main motivator in spiritual life. In terms of perspectives and pathways in life. Because of that affinity of the yeshivas to Cheker Emes, analysis of truth, they developed, those which are not anti-Musar, developed that same affinity towards Cheker Orchos Chaim, analysis of ways of life. Despite Rabbi Yisrael's ideas that Musar should become the province of the masses, it shouldn't be limited to Lomdei Torah. The idea only stuck to people who were involved in Cheker HaEmes as their main pursuit, not people who were involved in learning as a side pursuit. So therefore, it really stuck only yeshivas. Nachas Olam HaLoimdim, the heritage of the world of learners. V'chai rak minela, and only lived and was active among those. Haishim Matorah, those who were sitting and learning Torah. Veinu meitzitza chutza. It doesn't look outwards. El shuka chayim, into the marketplace of life, which is a flaw. Yes, it's true. Musar is based on Cheker Emes, but it's got to take that Cheker Emes elsewhere to look into the marketplace of ideas and be challenged by them and challenge them and grapple with them. Afki kartafkido, even though its primary purpose, especially going to Rabbi Simcha Zissel, who we know started the Talmud Torah in Grubin with the purpose of bringing Musar to people who would be balabatim, who would be leaders in society outside of the yeshiva, grappling with the issues of society. Especially even though its primary mission was supposed to be also outside the base of Medrash, not inside the base of Medrash. Didn't work. Didn't happen. Musar remained in the base of Medrash. Because Chassidus did expand among the nation, Musar and Musar remained closed off in the 4 Amos of Halacha. As a result of this came the fact the relationship between Musar and Chassidus is not symmetrical. Musar knows about Chassidus. If not that much about its theoretical world, its intellectual world, and this is something which I've not spoken about recently, but I've spoken about in the past. A big mystery in the yeshiva world is that Reb Chaim Volozhin was Kulo Kabbalah. You really have a Shachaim. It's Kabbalah from beginning to end. And Nefesh Chaim is the first true modern Musar Sefer. From there until Rabbi Yosef Leib Bloch in Tells, there is no relationship with Kabbalah whatsoever. It's as if Kabbalah was withdrawn from Musar, or Musar withdrew from Kabbalah. And even Rabbi Yosef Leib, as you know, was on the periphery of the Musar world. Shurei Das is not the same thing as Orat Safon, or as Chachma Musar, or as Das Chachma Musar. It's not in the same league in terms of mainstream Musar. It's an amazing sefer, and highly recommended. And in my personal spiritual heritage, my grandfather was the Talmud Muvak of Rabbi Yosef Leib Bloch, who wrote one of the Shurei Das. So this is my legacy. But you have to recognize it's on the periphery. So it seems, perhaps it was a backlash against Chassidus, who knows? It seems that there was a conscious decision made at the time by Rabbi Yisrael and by his Talmidim, because the same thing is true about the Alter from Navardik, the Alter from Zabbath, the Alter from Kelm. Kabbalah does not really play a role in any of this for him, to separate the psychology of Musar from the mysticism of Kabbalah. And therefore, Musar's awareness of Hasidus was also specifically in the realm of, as he says here, the psychology of Hasidus, Musar was very much aware. But on the other hand, Hasidus, which was outside of the walls of the Litvish Yeshiva world, never learned much about Musar. Didn't really know much about Musar at all. So Musar, to the extent that Hasidus was a psychological tool, was aware of Hasidus. But Hasidus, which is not primarily interested in psychology, even though some of it is psychological. And if you look at the P.S. Etzner, who was actually later, then a lot of it's psychological. But at the classic side of Hasidus is not into psychology, not into the character building. So it didn't know very much about Musar at all. It was asymmetrical. Hasidus didn't know anything about Musar, he says here. From here we have the ramifications. Hasidus eina chosheves al Musar. Hasidus does not think about Musar. It cast aside with a wave of the hand. But that's enough. Musar thinks a great deal about Hasidus. Because he was in quotation marks. And the footnote, Rabbi Avrohom says, he says, this is a bitui chavi b'chukei musar. This is a precious means of expression, one which they liked in the Musar world. In which much is said about recognizing an advantage and discerning the shortcoming. So, Haben Abikeres, right? Musar Hot Abikeres on Hasidus. What's the Bikeres? What's the critique? Shechosim Mevaker Musar. When, actually, before he gets to the critique itself, it says, it's a prefatory remark here. Shechosim Mevaker Musar. If a Chosim comes to critiques about Musar, which no doubt they will, and it's Marash's Hasidim critique the people who muffed up the opportunity of Rebbe Soil. The Shabbai Muslim Bakar Chassid Mafneus Bikato Michal Kapi Chassid. I'm sorry, I skipped. Chassid Bakar Ba Musar Aim Bikato Mufnes Kapi Ba Musar B'Torah Shekazeh. He doesn't actually critique the Ba Musar as a Ba Musar. Kapi Stam Misnagid. Don't differentiate. Ba Musar and Misnagid, it's all the same thing. Ba Musar Mevakar Chassid, when Ba Musar though critiques of Chassid, Mafnes B'Gato Michal Klape Chasidus. He's specifically addressing the Chasidus. Michutz Lebikores Klape Stam Misnagid Ha Musar She'eno Chassid. This is beyond the critique, which a Baal Musar has against those who oppose Musar who are not Hasidus. Which you also find many people who oppose Musar in Jamut itself. Yes, the Baal Musar have a critique of those people who oppose Musar, but they have a critique of Hasidus which is separate and unique and not dependent on their critique of the people opposed to Musar. And this is, I think, the most important paragraph in the entire piece. Of course, it goes on afterwards, quite a big deal, and there are other important paragraphs, but I think this is the most important part. Musar does not argue in Chassidus. Litim krovos frequently rava higam mimena nachas mimena. Very often Chassidus has great nachas, is very satisfied with Chassidus. Bichud especially, minachosan hayadusi shela, from its authentic Jewish strength. What is that? The capacity not to be negated by the environment. It's a tremendous thing which Chassidus has. It's able to withstand the environment to a much greater extent than non-Chassidus. Or between the opening of the hearts, the revelation of the hearts, Chassidim very often have a very much deeper perhaps because they're drinking together, than misnagdim. Hamrakech es hanimus, it's a beautiful line here. Hamrakech es hanimusus hachitzonis hashotah, which softens the superficial etiquette, the foolish superficial etiquette of which Europe has bestowed on the Litvaks. In other words, the Litvaks are influenced by European mores and European standards, including a form of etiquette which makes people much more superficial and restrained in their interactions with each other. Or Chassidus also has a willingness to devote oneself for a lofty goal, uvater lishma, and to forego for its sake, bekalus kolkach, so easily, al hergelei achem enochim, the easy habits of life, which those of us who are not Hasidim are not so willing to forego. This is true, much of this still today. Or from the youthful spirit, doing mitzvahs ma'asim tovim, asher lo tibasek, which does not cease, lo tibon, does not wilt, azikna b'seva, even unto old age. Many other advantages. But like we said before, yesh lo gam bikoras oleh. Musa also has a critique of Chassidus. Like Gedoyla here, and it's a great critique. Roe he has a Chassidus kichitzonis yosimidai. When Chassidim see this, they're not happy. But Avrohom is very perceptive. The Musar sees Chassidus as too superficial. Crayonis mufshetes yomidai, like ideal, based too abstract in its idealism. Yosem mashiesh lo chasim in Chassidus, more than a chassid actually gets from Chassidus. Hareu mashles nafsho, he deceives himself. Ki yesh lo mimena, that he actually gets from it. Achena Chassidus atzmo, it's true Chassidus itself. Yesh lo esei machshavas hamukos, is engaged with profound thoughts. Masim gdolim and great deeds. Reb Tzadok, the Shem Shmuel, the Sfas Emes, these are Chassidish Slorim, and they are dealing with the most profound thoughts and the greatest deeds. But in terms comes to the essence of a chassid, the person, the personality, the persona, he stands on the outside. Chassidus does penetrate to the depths of the greatest Torah problems, having to do with the relationship between creator and created, between the creatures themselves. But it penetrates too little into the ani, the self of a person. To see where a person is standing in the reckoning of his world. In the reckoning of all of his obligations. In his world. The similar davar, a sign of this is this could be written today. It's not as if it had to be written 100 years ago. Chassid is very good at critiquing others. That's small mad mode, but himself very little. The average chassid, deceives himself. Derech Mashal, for example, a nigun that he is. No words, right? It's a chassidish nigun. It's a nigun he's humming. It's coming out of the heart. And the dvekus, in which he finds himself, which he is experiencing, Mekrab and Neshama, is sourced in his Neshama. Even though it's quite possible that they're only frames of mind, moods, which are past. And they do not actually affect his actual essence. Now, our chassid will say, okay, you're right. Fake it till you make it. This is how we do it. Dvekus doesn't mean I actually have to be authentically dovek at all times, or I have to check myself to say I'm authentically dovek. I try. Perhaps I succeed, perhaps not, but we do it. We jump in. It's not to make a cheshbon nefesh, it's to experience, because chassid is all about experience. And if the experience is authentic, whether it truly penetrates me, it's a separate issue altogether. We certainly can't render judgment easily on these matters. We can't say the chassid, even the simplest chassid, when he is immersed in his dvekus, he's not sufficiently true, not sufficiently real. Also, but that constant tvias mitzvahs in quotation marks, that constant that constant masmeres is constant. Tvias is a constant demand of oneself. Also, that thought. It's possible that I deceive myself. Also, that constant thought about yourself. And it says in parentheses, the Yiddish term, not parentheses, footnote, monen sich, demanding yourself. Hoppen sich, klaren wegen sich. These are between the fotzim by Musa Shebelita. I'm not sure what hoppen sich means, to be honest with you. I'm sure I'm reading it right. Could be it's choffen sich. I think it's choffen sich. But klaren wegen sich, that I understand, to inquire about oneself. Zich, to look inside oneself. Aldos atzmo, concerning oneself. Hamachshava misoreres al kol prat bar ech bar hagas achaim, the thought which should arise on every detail which is of value in one's conduct of life. Perhaps did I deviate here from the proper pathway? Also, in other words, Chassidus doesn't necessarily look at those details. It's the big picture. Chassidus is about the big picture, about the experience, not about the nuance, about the specific nitty-gritty. All that which included in that idea, which is a precondition to Shivisi Hashem and Negi Tomid. Shivisi Hashem and Negi Tomid is great. I should equate myself as being always in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Harei, there's an idea which could come before that. Shivisi Yatzim Osil and Negi Tomid. I was equated myself before me. According to Rabbi Avrohom, Shivisi Yatzim Negi Tomid is essential in order and a precondition. Shivisi Hashem Negi Tomid. Am I real? Only if I am real can my relation with the Kodesh Baruch Hu be real. Am I true? Only if I am true can relationship with Kodesh Baruch Hu come true. I can't actually start from a relationship with Hashem and then say everything will be good. I have to know I'm working on myself, and that has to precede working on my relationship with Hashem. It's an amazing concept. Perhaps it's part of Derech Eretz Kol Torah. A koze matzui b'musar. All this is musar yotzim Hashem Chassidus more than a Chassidus. Im lo, and here it says in parentheses, im lo nehem machmirim yotzim b'dai. If not, then we should be even perhaps too stringent. If not, we should perhaps say because he should be a menu. The Chassidus our day kimat she'ein ze motzi klal. It's perhaps not prevalent at all. Habesh Zazal v'Talmid Vadash Yadu Misa. The Baal Shem Tov and his students knew this, and they certainly spoke about it. And he's referencing here Keser Shem Tov, and Keser Shem Tov is a very good Musar sefer. But as time went by, Nishtakea Hadover Adat. This emphasis on self and self-critique and self-analysis and the nitty-gritty and the details and the MS before the Dveikus, that became lost over time. Okay, that brings us to towards about the page Chabez, and I think this will do for our second episode.